Hi, I'm Magic Lens, the independent creator of the adventure romance webcomic Changeling. If you want to check it out, it's free to read on my Patreon and other comic hosting platforms. All links are in the description. Thank you for joining me today for this super special collab video. This is part 2 of the full collaboration, so be sure to check out part 1 on Artsume Shae's channel. All links are on screen and in the description. Now let's get to the video. In celebration of 1 whole year of both of our webtoons, I'm joined by the wonderful and talented Artsume Shae to talk about our comics and the creation process and what inspires us to do what we do.
Yay!
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited for today's discussion and continuing our question and answers about webcomics.
Yes, absolutely. Super cool to virtually be here. We definitely had a lot of great conversation in the first half, and I'm pumped to keep it going.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited. I think there's a lot of wonderful conversation and tips and things that we can share from our experience of 1 whole year of posting our comics and little trial and errors that we've gone through, and hopefully that can help aspiring comic creators in their journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. This, like we mentioned in the last half, there's a lot of things I wish I was able to hear when I was doing this the first time around.
Has there been a time where it ever felt like comic making was overwhelming? What are your practices to manage those feelings and how to overcome them?
It has felt overwhelming, for sure. I think it's different than like other responsibilities in life. I think for me, my discouragement has never, at least personally, never led to, well, then I just won't do this anymore. I do know that there are some people, some creators out there who have felt overwhelmed to the point where they just like, I can't do this anymore. And you know, they're totally valid in feeling like that. I think that it's been overwhelming at times just juggling it with like the 9 to 5. Really, mostly because my day job is a very creatively demanding job. I'm having to like come up with ideas, conceptualize stuff, you know, do editing and all of the above. And I think it's hard when you work on the thing that does bring you money that you don't enjoy maybe as much as the thing that you're doing for free. So it is a kind of an overwhelming balance at times. Try to make it where even if I'm doing something as small as like, you know, organizing, you know, panels, or if I have 30 minutes to an hour on my lunch break and I'm able to do some line art, like we talked about earlier, doing something at all has been, you know, really satisfying in the end. I do recognize that I still need to like give myself some off days, and days where I can like refill my creative cup. So I try to incorporate that still to help it not be so overwhelming.
Yeah, that's so true. I think everything that you said, like especially having to like recharge, and like I definitely like have that experience working full time and then like trying to balance my work on Changeling. And even though it's not like my job, it's just like I don't want to let myself down, you know, and that kind of like workaholicness kind of spawns from there. Workaholic of wanting to improve, but also because I love it so much, because our comics are so important to us, that working on it, it's exciting, but at the same time it's also like very physically demanding and taxing. And it takes so much time and effort to do. I totally agree, everything you said, 100%. I feel that.
And it's also interesting because like I used to not think about, I guess, art related injuries as much until doing this, and I'm like, dang, like maybe in the past I just wasn't drawing every day like I am now. But yeah, like you don't want to push yourself so hard to the point where you do get hurt, but it also is like it can just happen in general. So yeah, we want to have those good habits so that way we don't push ourselves to that point.
Definitely. I totally agree. And like I remember, I think it was a few years ago, I got like tennis elbow from just drawing the position I was drawing in, and I didn't even realize that it was from the same like repetitive motion of drawing huge to like proper posture and taking care of yourself and making sure that you're stretching and taking breaks, is making sure that you yourself are healthy and in good physical fitness to be able to like press forward with creation.
Yeah. And as you say posture, I'm over here like sitting up straight.
Yeah, I'm always like hunched over like a little shrimp at my desk, and it's terrible, but it's like, you know, for some reason it's like the most comfortable position to draw. But yeah, I relate to the feeling of getting overwhelmed, and I get overwhelmed a lot. You know, like we mentioned earlier in the first half, was like the feeling of like looking up at that mountain of work and thinking like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me forever to get to like all the fun stuff in the comic. You know, I have to go through and draw these panels of things that I'm, you know, not looking forward to. Like, especially if I'm like looking down at large, complicated panels of something that I've never drawn before, or I'm doing like tedious work like the flats and the shadows. It's easy to get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And I find that like, I think like the best thing that I could recommend to like overcome it is just like step away from it, you know, just put the pencil down, put the pen down, go for a walk, breathe, stretch, and then come back, make yourself a nice cup of tea, grab a sweet little treat to help take the edge off, and then like lock in, rip the band-aid off, and just get it done. Because like sometimes, and I don't know if it's just me, but like getting those annoying like problem child panels done are the whole like bottleneck of the rest of the workflow. Like, at least for me, it's like the best feeling to get those complicated panels done, to be able to like push forward with the other easy stuff, take it piece by piece, and just being kind to yourself, because like you are the only person who can make this story happen, and without you being here happy and healthy, there will be no story.
Yes.
So take care of yourself.
Yes, AI can never.
What are your 3 most favorite things about comic making, and what are your 3 least favorite things about comic making?
So my 3 favorite things is definitely the satisfying line art. The line art when you do the sketch, and now granted, I try to be pretty quick about my sketches, so I think the sketches are a pretty good, accurate representation of like what, you know, the final line art needs to look like. But when I do the line art, seeing those crisp lines, I'm like, oh, this looks so good. I just like that kind of I guess like manga page look to it. So I think that's a fun part of the process, is when I get to read the comments. Read the comments of my episodes. That is so fun, because, you know, you write the story, and for most people, I would say maybe even for Webtoon originals, you're working alone, you know? So when you're writing your story, unless you know, ask a friend or a family member to like give you a little bit of feedback, for the most part, you're kind of creating it in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. So I love seeing comments validate, like, does this come across? Does this story element make sense and things? I had this one person, they like had just, I guess, discovered my Webtoon because I was getting like comments on episodes like all in one day, and they wrote like paragraphs of practically like a play-by-play of like all the episodes. And I was like, that is so cool to like see somebody understand what I'm trying to do. And I think really the third thing is just drawing my characters. I really have a lot of fun when I'm drawing things that maybe don't go in the comic. So like drawing sketches, drawing stuff for reels, or just drawing like an illustration just with my characters is a lot of fun to do, and it just makes me happy. I have like up on my board the group photo selfie that I made of my characters for the 1 year, and it literally is like a family photo.
Aw, it's the babies. The whole gang.
Yeah, it's my children.
I love that one so much. I also have a Bible.
Yeah. So that's the fun part, I think, is having these characters that you just really become so close to. Now the not so fun part.
Oh man, yeah, here we go.
The reality. So I don't like coloring, but I do like rendering and shading, which is ironic. But I think that coloring is just so like monotonous because it's just like, all right, like for Zan, it's like, all right, yellow t-shirt, all right, red pants, all right, blue hair, next. And then you just keep going through that. Most of the time, thankfully it's a quicker process, but most of the time I've got like something on in the background and I'm like doing that mindlessly. It's just not like a part that brings me that much joy.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that. Yeah, it's so tedious.
Tedious, there it is. That's the word. It is a tedious process. This isn't necessarily something, well, it's something that I hope to do for the future, but the one part of comic making, a buffer, I think it's called, that goes more into something I wish I had have done before, which I've gotten better about having a little bit of a buffer. Like I can have like an episode like done before I even start on another one, before it even needs to go published. So I have like a 1 episode buffer, but not that big of one. So that's a hard thing. The thing is just trying to be aware of like the landscape of webtoons and webcomics, but then also realizing it's like, okay, I need to go back into my bubble, because I don't know, sometimes I feel like the politics of it can be kind of overwhelming and can take the fun out of it a little bit. But I just try to like, you know, keep my head down, like work on the things that I want to work on and tell the story that I want to tell. And then, like we mentioned earlier, just letting the people who are interested in our stories come to our platform. So yeah that's so true. I definitely agree with like all of that, and yeah, it's so easy, especially like if you're in like the community, it's easy to get caught up in the politics, like you said, of it all. But you know, yeah, just sort of like doing you and pressing forward, and like despite the difficulties of it, it's an amazing experience to be able to like tell your story and bring it to life. Everything you said, like I totally agree with. I guess it got me thinking too on like what my things really are. I would say like my 3 favorite things are, number 1, creating a story that I would have loved to have read when I was growing up and figuring out like my place in the world. Being able to like tell that story and like know that like my past self would have been like so happy about it. So like honoring that by being able to like go through the work and making it happen is like my number 1 accomplishment, and the whole purpose that I'm creating the story in the first place. My second favorite thing is following my comic making dream and honoring it by like sharing that with the world. I think that's like really exciting to be like actually be able to do something that I kind of always wanted to do. And yeah, it's not my living, but it's still like as a hobby to be able to like have that and actually do the thing that I've always like dreamt of, like creating something like this. My third one is connecting with other creators and seeing other people enjoying the world and my characters that I put my whole heart and soul into making, and like being introduced to like other creators and their stories. So that's been like super amazing, super exciting experience, because yeah, I've been in my like little bubble, and being able to like finally meet other people who are other artists like creating and telling their own stories. It's so inspiring, and it makes it like that much more motivating to like continue and creating. I would say like my 3 least favorite things about comic creation. Number 1 is marketing. It sucks and I don't know how to do it, and I'm so tired of like chasing those confusing algorithms and like impossible posting schedules that I've given up on it entirely. It's so hard. And then number 2 is posting anxiety. I'm like super anxious when I post,
new like comic, like a new chapter or any kind of like artwork. So like I would like post and ghost, you know, I'll just like put it out there and then I'll just hide away and not look at anything, because like I feel like I don't know how to deal with like the idea of more than just 2 people looking at my work. I don't even know, like it's just too much for my brain to handle. But yeah, I would say the third one is the critics. Well, like my comic isn't that popular, so I haven't gotten much attention on it, and I'm really happy about that too. To be honest, I'm like a bit terrified by my work being thrown into like the masses to be critiqued into an oblivion. So like I know a critique is just an opinion, but I do this comic for myself, and I know like my comic is not for everyone, and I like being in my like little indie niche world, and I'm happy with my small following. Like I'm a huge overthinker, and I'm super critical of my own work. So I think like the idea that I'm like most worried about is that I may encounter a bigger hater than myself.
Oh no.
Because like I love and hate my story. Like I'll be honest, like I'm very critical, and I don't know, I'm such a weenie when it comes to like critique. But yeah, that's part of it.
All completely valid. I think that your wins are not your wins, but your upsides of the process are something definitely to hold on to even more. And I think your least favorite things about it is like, unfortunately, the thing that kind of comes with the territory. And it's so fascinating that, yes, like I'm also an overthinker, and I'm just like, it's so funny, I still put myself into this position.
Yes.
I did do some video while I was out yesterday with family, and this girl, she's just like, are you a content creator? And I oh my god, I became so self-conscious all of a sudden, because I'm thinking to myself, I mean, yes, I am putting myself out there to be perceived, but it's like I just don't want people to call attention to it.
Totally.
It's like, yeah, like you spend all this time like uploading a video or a comic, and yes, you see the number count on, you know, who is viewing it, but they're not like faces. You don't have a face to it. So that makes it much easier when you are posting these things, because it's almost like it's just to the anonymous void.
Yeah.
And then once you get caught, it gets brought to your attention, all of a sudden you become like self-conscious because you realize, oh my god, I am being perceived.
Totally. And it's like, and I had like a conversation about this with a few of my friends, and it's like, I feel like my story, yes, a lot of it is inspired by myself and my own experiences and stuff, but like not all of it. Like I don't want people to think that's like a cry for help or something. Like I just like to tell these kind of stories. Like it doesn't mean that I'm a sad person, you know, or that I have a miserable life. No, I have a happy life. And, you know, I think that's like part of the overthinking part, is feeling like the stories that we put out there are going to be a reflection of ourselves, and that comes back onto the creator. And like that's not the intention. It's like, you know, we're putting an artwork out there as like a talking piece about and other things, other messages, and that we want to bring forward. And, you know, that's not a reflection on us necessarily. At least I don't want it to be, but gosh, I totally empathize with everything you just said. And yeah, it's tough, but I do think the goods outweigh the bad. The good things about creating a comic makes it worth it to go through, you know, the more challenging parts. And I think over time, at least myself, like I'm getting better at being able to handle things and, you know, grow a bit of a tougher skin. Yeah. What is the most unexpected thing you learned after becoming a webcomic artist? I would say it's like how to wear 100 different hats all at once.
Oh, yeah.
As a sole creator of Changeling, I don't have help with anything that I've put out. So it's been a process of learning new skills and balancing it all while comic creation itself. It's like already extremely complicated process. The writing, the storyboarding, designing, editing, marketing, self-promotion, branding, outreach, networking with the community. Like there's so many small skills that I never even thought about when I started. Like, it just comes through trial and error. And when I started working on Changeling, I never imagined like the amount of work behind the scenes creating it. And I never imagined like the countless hours that I've probably racked up in just research alone and YouTube tutorials and things to try and figure everything out. Even now, still learning new things, like especially with YouTube content creation, like having to learn new programs that I never thought I'd ever work in, much less make anything good. So yeah, I've just never realized how many things that you learn. And it's a good thing too. Like, I think it's great to be able to like have the experiences and open up out of my comfort zone and embrace the change. Whereas I never would have had that experience if I never started.
I completely agree. You know, we see some of these really big projects that they go through multiple levels of people before they even reach us. And honestly, that actually seems like a kudos, a pat on the back to every single, you know, Webtoon Canvas creator, because I would argue that how our stuff comes out is, you know, very professional, very well made. For our stuff to stack up to some very professional projects out there, and it's just one person, is really something to commend. So I would say everybody pat themselves on the back. if you are a Webtoon Canvas, even original creator, I think about, like with my day job, there are a lot of things that we work on that there are multiple levels. We often have to work cross-functionally with other departments, and it can be kind of you know, tedious. I think for me, one of the best things about working on a project of my own is the only person who has to approve it is me.
I know, yeah, for sure. And like, you know, all these different levels, and having worked at it like an agency and stuff, there is a person for everything. You know, there's someone to deal with the client, there's someone to do this little thing, there's someone to do that thing, and it's like there's specialty places. But when you're controlling everything, you're doing everything. So you have to do even the stuff that you don't want to do. And it's a challenge for sure.
For me, the most unexpected thing I've learned, and I guess I'm thinking myself, well, duh, but like in hindsight, just how long it takes. I guess when I first started this, I thought that I was going to be further in terms of like my episodes than when what ended up, you know, being the case. So it's definitely a slower process than I thought it was going to be. But I think sitting here now, you know, like I mentioned, I feel like I had to kind of rework certain episodes to be the way that they are now. And I'm very satisfied with how the episodes and like how the story has been progressing at a pace that I think works. So yeah, I think that this is definitely, we've mentioned it before, it's a marathon, not a sprint. There are story beats that I thought I was going to get to much longer ago. But I think it comes, it has to happen, and it has taught me a lot of things. Now, are there things that even still with this one here of making the comic that I wish had been different? Absolutely. Which we might talk about that later, but I think that knowing that this is not going to be an overnight success is something that I have now learned.
It's so true. Like, I totally relate to the idea of it being like taking so much more time than I expected. Like, I had the exact same thought when I reached that milestone of 1 year. I was like, oh my God, I just feel like the story is just starting. Like, I thought it'd be so much further along, but it's a very slow process. And especially if this is like, you know, you're doing it on the side, combined with like life and everything else that's going on, it's definitely a wake-up call, kind of, in a way of being like, okay, you know, it's gonna take some time to get to the further points in your story, but, you know, don't let that demotivate you from like continuing and telling that story, because you'll get there little by little. But yeah, it does take some time, and after a year later, it's a bit of a slow process.
Yes.
Much of our stories are inspired from our own life and the people around us, sometimes even in subtle ways. What would you say is the main element of your story that is most inspired from your life as the creator?
Okay, so I was working at a retail job whose name is the name of a fruit. I don't think I have any NDA or anything. I just never want to say their name explicitly.
Voldemort.
It was a tech company. I know, right? Don't say their name. But it was a tech company that I worked in the retail portion of, and their name was with a fruit. But anyway, I felt like I was getting to a point where I'm like, I don't see myself doing this forever. And I had opportunities within that company that took me to like, you know, amazing places. Like they had this really cool apprenticeship program where you can like go and work on projects at like corporate, like in their headquarters. And it was a great experience. And I think it was the most like invaluable experience. But at the same time, I always had to come back to my store because, you know, it was temporary. And I'm over here thinking like, I've got these skills that I am utilizing on like a super cool scale, but then I just had to come right back to, you know, my little retail job. And it was starting to become, you know, something that I didn't really enjoy doing anymore. And, you know, I have been living in my city for a long time, so you know I had roots here, and it was just kind of like I wish that I could just like escape this situation, feeling like I don't know what's next in my life, that next chapter. And I think when I was conceptualizing the Space Ultima story, it was kind of like she got out of her comfort zone in a very like dramatic kind of way. And I thought that was cool. I thought it was kind of like an interesting metaphor for like, you know, sometimes somebody has to like kind of grab you by the shoulders and shake you and be like, you can be doing so much more. You can be doing so much better, and you can't hold yourself back anymore. So I think that in a weird way, I took inspirations from it. Somebody who I used to work with joked, and they were like, Sophie's convenience store uniform looks kind of like our work uniforms. And I was like, what? Huh?
Oh my god, that's so fascinating though.
I was like, I don't know what you're meaning.
Yeah, but that's like amazing, you know, because like I know like from Space Ultima, like as a fan, you know, like I like see the similarities, you know, in the story, and it's amazing that like because you experienced those things that you were able to put in that like raw feeling what it's like, and those emotions that you see come through in Sophie's like personality and also like her struggles. It's so real, the way that you depicted it in the story, and like so visceral that like you can see, you know, how she's feeling there and confliction that she has, like not knowing what to do but still feeling like she has potential and opportunity but kind of scared because you put in that experience that you went through. It's fast, like it's so beautiful to see that come through in like your creation as well, for others to be able to like experience that and feel that along with your character and kind of in a way with you, you know, and what you've experienced.
Thank you. I find it interesting because like I do have it listed as a sci-fi, which I sometimes debate because it's not necessarily so sci-fi in terms of its plot, rather it's just the setting and in terms of like how and what the world that it takes place in. But I think that no matter the genre, I just want to make sure that her experiences and how she expresses what she's going through is just like authentic. So yeah,
no, it definitely is. It feels so genuine and it's just illustrated so beautifully. it's kind of hard because like I feel like different parts of my story and being so long, there's different parts of myself that I put in at different times. Sometimes I guess I don't even really realize it, but like on a small scale, like with my characters, I like to put a lot of my own personality. I think each one of my characters have like a bit of myself in it, which is kind of strange to think about. Like whenever I'm writing them, I kind of act them out, like who is this character and how would they react in this situation? How would I react in this situation? I really like to put in like some of my worst qualities about myself into the characters. Like I love creating like flaws in their personalities and things. At least for like Rue, my main character, I gave her like my stubbornness, but I also gave her my optimism. And then for Andre, I gave him like my irritability with things. You know, I get frustrated about stuff, but I also gave him my patience for the most part. I don't know. I think he might have more patience than me. But I think like story-wise, I put a lot of like my own experience of like redefining belongingness and like what that word kind of means. And like in Rue's struggle of like not belonging in a place, but having to like learn that belonging somewhere doesn't mean like a physical place, but a feeling of trust and like acceptance from friends and family and like kind of found family in a way as well. I feel like that was like something that I had to learn when I was a teen growing up and into like a young adult and leaving my small town and like finally finding other people who I could like make genuine connections with. Like it was difficult in like a small town, you know, I couldn't really connect and I thought it was just me, but I didn't realize that like finding people who have things in common with me and like opening up and coming out of my shell and finding belongingness that way, because it's hard to like connect when you're kind of like stuck in a small like little pond, you know, does kind of come out in at least the Rue and leaving her island and kind of coming into like a new world. And I think that's something from like my own experience that I found like a lot of inspiration from.
Yeah, no, I love that, because you're right. Like she seems to have, you know, a life that's kind of troubling at first when she's like on the island, and then compared to now, and I mean, while maybe we're still in such a short time in the series, it even already feels like a polar opposite. Like she does have like this kind of like goofy optimism. I think that her the way that she expresses herself is kind of like that, like kind of fish out of water. It's almost like the rest of the world is like so like worn down and skeptical, versus how she comes into it. She kind of like brings like in a new life to, you know, all the people that she meets. And in a way, I think that a lot of, you know, similarities are between Space Ultima and Changeling, where we have these female leads who have such strong attributes about them that have kept them going this far, and then they take those experiences and push forward into this new environment, and they're not going to give up. They're going to obviously experience challenges, and they are currently experiencing a lot. But at the same time, there's just something about them. There's like this spark that's not gonna like keep them down.
Yeah, that's so true. And like, you're right. Like our story does have a lot of like that kind of, you know, going and entering like a new world and learning and, you know, alongside the viewers and the audience, you know, like experiencing this world and, you know, those difficulties along with it you're going through with the characters. And like it's so fun, like you said, you know, like the beginning of the stories being like kind of stifled in like the life that they're living, but then entering a new world and then finding that they are, you know, themselves, like the optimism, the potential that they have is like coming through so much more naturally. And I think that's a really fun that like both their stories have that kind of way of like, you know, escaping an old life and being like reborn in a way. And I think that's really beautiful. And overall showing that other people that, yeah, you know, you are finding and forging your own path. So like take that leap and go forward and do what you want to do and make life how you want to make it.
100%.
So how can you have fun making a story? In what ways do you keep the tedious process of comic making interesting and fun for yourself?
I think you said something earlier, where you're talking about this being the story that like your younger self would want to read, I think that's 100% what the process needs to be. I think about Space Ultima and I think about, okay, what story am I gonna want to read? Like when a new episode is uploaded, like, am I that reader and that viewer who is, you know, excited about the next episode and opening it up and ready to scroll and read? I try to keep that for me. And I think that if you are like making the story that you want to make, and having like the heart of that story be what you want it to be, you know, I'm always open to, you know, feedback. I'm always open into suggestions. I've gotten them in the past. And I think that those things can, you know, be implemented, but at the same time, it's like, I gotta know, I guess, I think it's called like your North Star. Like I want to keep with that as best as possible. Also, I just can't not think about my story. I'll be like in traffic. Yeah, like I'll be in traffic and I'm just like, my mind just starts to wander and like I'm thinking about like plot points and upcoming arcs and like different story beats and like interactions between, you know, Sophie and Zan. I'm like, I already have. It's like, and I'm sure you and like any other creator goes through this where you're like, you know how like the moment, right, is gonna happen.
Oh my God.
You're like fantasizing about, you know, what them kindling that you know relationship and partnership is gonna be like, but you're just like so far from that, so far. So anyway, I just think about like I kind of daydream about it. I always, you know, since a kid have had very like visual imagination, a very you know, large inner mind. I grew up as an only child, so I felt like I had to have that where I was always like coming up with stories and like little shows in my head. So I think what keeps it fun is just kind of daydream about it and then hoping that I can bring it to page so that way other people can also experience it.
Oh my gosh, you put it so beautifully. That's exactly the same feeling, like the daydreaming, just like loving and breathing that story. That's like what I mean. Like I can't connect with other people who don't like feel that way about their comic or like their story that they're telling, because it's so like, it's everything to me, and like the characters and everything, like they're alive in my brain. Like you said, like I also had like kind of like a similar experience like growing up and creating stories from like things like I'd be outside playing with rocks and the rocks would all have their own personalities, and creating those stories and having like imagination, allowing yourself to be imaginative and putting like those big ideas out there and getting excited about it and kind of like invest yourself emotionally into it, because you have to be your biggest cheerleader and having full faith in your story. And I think that's something that, you know, might be difficult for some other people, and considering that like shame sometimes like around fantasy and creating fantasy stories, at least like kind of my experience growing up in like a small town, and not everyone really understands like the artist, or they'll see it kind of like a lesser, you know, like fantasy is like a lesser thing. But I find like that sort of escapism and into my own world is like what kept me going. It was like an escape from the boringness of reality that was like, oh, I'm getting through my day, but at the end of the day, I'm going to devote all this time into like writing and adding it to my script. I guess like that's the main thing of like, for myself, is like the tedious process is balanced out by the excitement, you know, for the story and being able to bring it to life, and getting to like also draw fun things on the side. Like doing the collab was super fun, or like drawing like little AUs and stuff, or like just doing fun little illustrations with your characters. Like you might not be at that part of the story yet, but have fun with it. Be excited about your characters, and like with each thing that you draw them with, like you're breathing life into them. At least that's like my perspective. It's just being excited, keeping that spark alive. That's the main thing. It's, you know, be excited. You're creating a whole universe, and that's all from you.
Absolutely. I think like, you know, make sure that it's not a job until it is a job.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like and I've heard that from like, you know, originals creators, and I think that there is a way to keep the excitement in it even when you're not doing it at that level. But yeah, like just have fun with it, and drawing little side drawings of your characters in different scenarios. I think a lot of us have had funs doing like TikToks and reels, where it's just seeing like some goofy aspect of your characters that maybe you don't get to see in the comic. That's the other thing too, is that some of these like little sketches may never be a part of the main story, but because we know our characters so intimately, we get to just do like little goofy things with them every now and then.
Yeah, and it's all a part of honoring that for yourself, and you know, allowing yourself to be able to just create freely and just love what you do. It's a very taxing process of like comic creation itself is very tedious, but you know, there's ways to love it and creating that excitement and keeping it alive.
I do have kind of, I guess, a bonus question. And this is more so just closing thoughts, I guess. What would you say? So after this year, we talked about all the things we've learned. How do you see the next year of Changeling?
I would really love to be able to like create some more like animation stuff on the side. I think that's been another exploration of mine, is like getting back into it. And then, yeah, there's a lot of really exciting stuff coming up in this chapter. And I am just itching to be able to get to the parts where I can get to more of like the creatures and like the monsters within the world. And a lot of the chapters are pretty long, and there's like a lot of stuff in it that I want to cover. So yeah. I'll see how far I get. But there is like pretty big turning point coming up for the characters, and oh my god, I am so thrilled, and I cannot even express into words like how much I have to hold back from spilling the beans on it all, because I just, you know, I want to get it out there so desperately that it's just like I cannot wait to be able to like get back into drawing and be able to like create more of the panels and tell my story, and for you guys to be able to like see these characters. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
How about you?
I would say for Space Ultima, kind of the same thing. I think that the next year is going to look like maybe more behind the scenes content. I'm hoping to similar to you too, like try and add some like more motion elements to it.
Nice.
I have a big project that that pertains to Space Ultima that I am going to be taking my time, being patient with myself, with doing. I feel like I draw very quickly. So in my mind, I almost have conditioned myself to either think, oh, this can be done in a day, or, you know, oh, if I try this out, it'll work the first time. Neither is the case. So I'm trying to let this be something that spans over a few months as opposed to just like a few weeks. And I really hope that I can start introducing, similar to you, like actually start introducing the villain in a way that is going to be more consistent, because I feel like at first I kind of teased the villain and none of the story and episodes involved them that much. So I know that the villain, she definitely has a story of her own that I think readers are going to enjoy uncovering. So I do think that we're going to have a lot more action, a lot more story. I think up until this point, a lot of it has been kind of like the setup. Like, I was just talking to my boyfriend about this, and I was like, I think everything has been offering questions, and then in this year, there's going to be a lot of questions being answered. So I'll say that.
Oh my god, that's so exciting. I cannot wait. I'm so thrilled. Like, even with like the last chapter that's been out, like just like seeing the character interactions, everything. So I am thrilled, and I know that you're cooking you're cooking good for all of
Yes.
us. So, oh my God, I am so glad though that we got to like connect and be able to like go through and, you know, share like our wisdom that we learned over the year, and, you know, going into the new year with excitement and keeping that spark alive. So like, I am so thankful that we got the opportunity to connect finally.
Yay! Me too. Very great opportunity, and hopefully more in the future.
For sure, yeah, I'm totally down. Thank you so much for watching and supporting both of our art journeys. Please check out Artsume Shae's channel if you haven't already, and subscribe. Also, you can find Space Ultima on Webtoon and Inkverse. Hope you all have a wonderful new year, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!